transformer. What is a transformer? Transformer is simply put, it's an AC to AC converter. AC to AC converter. So we have different devices like this. A rectifier is an AC to DC converter, which is there in electronics. Similarly, oscillator is a DC to AC converter. Here we have transformer, it's an AC to AC converter. Then what is there to convert? Means we convert, we increase the voltage or decrease the voltage. There are two types of transformers: step up or step down. Step up or step down. All right. So means whatever be the AC voltage that we are applying, we get a higher voltage on the other side, or that is known as a step up, and the opposite when you apply a higher voltage on the primary and get a lower voltage on the secondary, that is a step down. So this transformer is a very important device in transmission of alternating voltages. That's why, because of transformer, we are using AC voltages for every high voltage purposes. Like in domestic or industrial purposes, we are using in India, and everywhere in the world we are using AC voltages, not DC but AC voltages. Why? Because it's, while transmitting power energy from the powerhouses or the power stations to the where we require the power, means at the domestic or industrial sites, there are a lot of transmission losses. We can reduce this transmission loss if we transmit the power with a low current and high voltage, but we cannot use it as such. We cannot apply the very high voltage to the devices which are there at our home. But we must transmit at a very high voltage with a low current, all right, through the transmission lines. So these AC voltages can easily be stepped up to a very high voltage and stepped down to a very low voltage using these transformers. So at the power stations, we generate voltage at some very low voltage, and we step it up to a high voltage and transmit through the transmission lines, and we receive at our domestic areas, and we use a step down transformer to reduce the voltage, and we use at our household. All right. So during the transmission, in order to reduce the power loss, we use this very high voltage transmission. For that, in order to step up and step down, in order to step up the voltage and step down the voltage, we need transformers. That's why this cannot be done in case of DC. It's not easy to step up or step down DC voltages, but because the transformers work only in AC, okay, works only in AC, that's why we are using, AC is the most predominant one where we use, for high voltage or high wattage purposes. Okay, in electronics and all, we are using DC. Everywhere else we are using AC voltages. All right. So the working principle of transformer is based on mutual induction, which we have studied in the previous chapter, electromagnetic induction. All right. This transformer can be discussed in the chapter EMI or can be discussed in AC. Anyway, this is actually there in the textbook in chapter alternating current. So what exactly is mutual induction? Whenever there is a change in current in the first coil, there is an induced EMF or induced voltage in the second coil. So mutual induction is due to the flux linkage between the first and second coils. So this is the basic idea. So that means there will be two coils. We call them primary and secondary. Two coils, primary and secondary. The number of turns NP and NS be the number of turns in each coil, all right. NS is the number of turns in the primary and NS is the number of turns in the secondary. Now, how do we make these coils coupled together, or to make sure that the entire flux in the primary reaches the secondary? So there are two ways for winding it. So we usually represent a transformer like this. Right, one of them is primary, the other one is secondary, and we have a core soft iron core, and we are winding it over on the soft iron core. All right, this is one way. Okay, another way is use a single core and use the windings on top of each other. Definitely the windings do not touch, they are insulated coils actually. Okay, so whichever way we use doesn't matter. Why do we need this soft iron core? All these are soft iron actually, soft iron. Okay, soft iron, to make sure that the flux generated, magnetic flux in the first coil reaches the second coil. Anyway, so these are the two ways of windings, and right now we are just using the diagram to work the problems out, you know. So we have, and in the circuit the symbol for transformer is like this, means we have two coils and they are coupled together. Okay, this is the symbol used in circuits. Anyway, so we have two coils, they are very close to each other. Let's say this is the primary and this is the secondary. We have NP number of turns in the primary and NS number of turns in the secondary. Okay, so we apply a voltage over here, we apply an AC voltage over here, let's call it VP, the voltage applied in the primary. So a current IP passes through it, and magnetic field lines are produced over here. Magnetic flux or magnetic field lines are there, and these magnetic field lines are coupled with the secondary coil through these magnetic field lines are coupled with the primary and secondary using, because of magnetic, you know, soft iron. Okay, so we wind them together. All right, so the first assumption that we make, the first assumption that we make is 100% flux linkage. Means that whatever with the field lines that is in the primary is also linked with the secondary. So that's what mean by 100% flux linkage. And let phi be the flux in one coil, one turn of the coils, Okay, so phi be the flux through one turn of the coils. So what is the total flux in the primary? Since there are n turns, np turns, the total flux is going to be np phi, and flux in the secondary is ns phi. All right, phi is the flux through one coil, and the entire flux is there in both primary and secondary. Total, I mean, the flux passing, field lines passing through one turn in the primary and also in the secondary are the same and is equal to phi. So what is the induced EMF? Induced EMF in the primary is equal to minus d phi by dt, right? Which phi? The flux in the primary. So this is going to be minus np d phi by dt. Similarly, in the secondary, the induced EMF is equal to minus d by dt of phi s, which is equal to minus ns d phi by dt. Divide them both. Induced EMF in the primary divided by induced EMF in the secondary. This is going to be minus np d phi by dt divided by minus ns d phi by dt. So these d phi by dt derivative terms gets cancelled and the negatives gets cancelled. Okay, before moving further, this induced EMF in the primary will be equal to the induced EMF in the primary will be equal to the voltage applied in the primary, right? Because they are parallel. And if you connect a voltmeter over here, you will measure, when you apply the voltage on the primary, because of mutual induction, the voltage gets, either stepped up or stepped down to the secondary. That voltage can be measured over here. Let's assume the voltage measured is equal to voltage in the secondary, and this is going to be the induced EMF in the secondary. So induced EMF in the secondary is equal to voltage in the secondary. All right. So this is equal to voltage in the primary by voltage in the secondary is equal to number of turns in the primary divided by number of turns in the secondary. This is the result. This is the equation that we use for transformers. There is a condition. What was that? Star. The condition is nothing but 100% flux linkage. We have made an assumption that is 100% flux linkage. Vp by Vs is equal to Np by Ns. Now, if Np is greater than Ns, means the number of turns in the primary is greater than the number of turns in the secondary, implies the voltage in the primary is greater than the voltage in the secondary. So primary voltage is higher and the secondary voltage is lower. That's what step down is. Step down. And Np less than Ns means the number of turns in the secondary is higher, means the voltage in the secondary is going to be higher than the primary. So we will get a higher voltage in the secondary than the voltage applied in the primary. So that is step up. Okay. Another assumption, 100% efficiency. 100% efficiency. If that's the case, what's mean by efficiency? It's the ratio of power output by power input. So if it is 100% efficient, power input must be equal to power output. All right. That means the voltage input is the Vp and the current input is Ip. Similarly, the voltage output is Vs and the current output is Is, current in the secondary. Current in the secondary. So that means what is the power input? Voltage in the primary into current in the primary is equal to voltage in the secondary into current in the secondary. So Vp by Vs is equal to Is by Ip. So higher the voltage, lower the current. Higher the current, lower the voltage. We already know that Vp by Vs is equal to Np by Ns. So this is another result, combined with the first one, having two conditions. What are they? 100% flux linkage. Always remember that 100% flux linkage and 100% efficiency. 100% efficiency. So these are the results related to transformers. It works only in alternating current, because the magnetic induction happens only when there is a change in voltage or change in current. Constant DC does not create any change in voltage or current.